My name is Caroline Leonard, and today we are going to be talking about the topic of juvenile delinquency. Okay, so we're going to be starting off with an introduction that is going to include a list of objectives that we're going to be talking about throughout the duration of the presentation. All right, so we're going to start off with what is delinquency, moving on to what age does it start, followed by what causes it. All right, and then we're going to go on to the types of offenders, and also what kind of offenses they commit. Alright, and then we're also going to talk about who is more likely to offend. So that could be females, males, that could be any age, okay? And then we're going to finish it out by talking about some solutions that we could utilize to help minimize delinquent acts, as well as things that could be used to help juveniles kind of maybe avoid those certain peers that cause them to commit delinquent acts, as well as maybe certain programs known as diversion programs that help to regulate the lives of juveniles, as well as to help keep them out of the justice system. Okay, so what is delinquency? Delinquency is known as minor crimes, and typically they're committed by younger people, okay? And these younger people tend to be minors, and a minor is anybody under the age of 18, okay? So minor theft is kind of what they start out committing. That's the kind of the most common crime they start out committing. And they start committing minor theft around the age of 14 to 15, okay? And then moving on as they age, around 16 to 17 is when they start committing more serious violent crimes. And this could also include more serious theft crimes. So maybe that's like a property theft crime, or carjacking, or just things like that, okay? Other examples of delinquent acts may include assault, burglary, vandalism, or maybe even the possession of illegal substances, or the distribution and or possession of illegal substances. Okay, so moving on, does age relate to delinquency? Delinquency is it's most commonly committed during adolescence, which is again from the ages of 14 to about 18, okay? So most juveniles begin to slow down during late adolescence, and these offenders are known as adolescence limited offenders. So again, they might start committing crimes from the age of 14, and they may do it all the way up until the age of 18, but that may be when they slow down and stop. Okay, but there is another type of offender, and these types of offenders are typically on the other side of the spectrum, and these are known as chronic offenders. Okay, so chronic offenders are known as juveniles who offend starting from their early childhood, and they are offending all the way until they are well into their adulthood. So those are chronic offenders. What causes delinquency? Most common cause is family, so that is going to be who you're raised around, right? So going into the social learning theory involves juveniles learning to engage in delinquent acts from their peers. So I believe that also goes along with family. So whoever you're raised around, you're gonna tend to mimic their mannerisms, right? So if they teach you that violence is the solution to everything, that is most likely what you're gonna believe, and you're also going to use violence as the solution to a multitude of things, right? So abuse is another thing that goes along with causing delinquency. So it can include dealing with abuse, which can be mental, physical, or even emotional, or it could even be all three. All right, so psychological causes are another thing, and these can include low self-control, aggression, and peer pressure. Low self-control is when you have high impulsivity. So if you have high impulsivity. You tend to make decisions very quickly, and you don't think a lot before you make a decision. So, low self-control, you're going to make decisions very quickly and without thinking. Okay, aggression. Maybe someone grew up with aggression issues and they're not really sure how to deal with it. So again, that goes along with the violence topic. So if you grew up thinking that violence is the solution, then that is what you were going to think, and that's what you were going to use to solve the problem at hand. Lastly, peer pressure. So peer pressure is the want to impress your peers, and if you want to impress your peers, you might decide, yes, I'm going to commit this theft, and you're going to want to impress your peers, to keep hanging out with them, and that's peer pressure. Okay? So types of offenders, there are 3 main types of offenders. So there's non-offenders, low-rate offenders, and high-rate offenders. Okay? So we're going to talk about each one, starting out with the non-offenders, all right? So non-offenders take up a small percentage of juveniles, and these juveniles are the group that do not engage in juvenile delinquency at all. And they take up about 10% or less of the group. Moving on, there are low-rate offenders, okay? And this is actually the majority of the group. So it's a large percentage of juveniles, and they tend to commit a small amount to they tend to commit a small to moderate number of offenses, okay? Moving on, high-rate offenders, they also take up a small percentage, but this group is the group of juveniles who commit an enormous amount of offenses, all right? And they take up about 5% to about 15% of the group, all right? Okay, types of offenses. Juveniles commonly commit minor offenses, and these are known as status offenses, okay? So status offenses are known as an action that is prohibited to a certain group of people, all right? And so this certain group of people typically tends to be juveniles. So examples of status offenses are truancy, which is missing school. So once you miss school so many days, you get a letter. And I believe you can receive up to 3 before you have to go to juvenile court to kind of sort that out. Moving on, running away is another example, violation of curfew. And lastly, the underage use / distribution of drugs and or alcohol, okay? And more serious offenses include simple assault and sexual offenses, okay? Types of offenses, who is more likely to offend? So both male and females have about the same probability of getting arrested for minor theft, but males are more likely to get arrested for more serious crimes. So this serious crimes meaning violent crimes. So that can mean simple assault, that can mean a sexual offense, while females are more likely to be arrested for theft. So most commonly known as larceny theft. Okay? And solutions. So there are a number of solutions that could be utilized to help kind of minimize juvenile delinquency, but there are 2 main types that we're going to talk about, okay? So the first most common solution is juvenile court, which juvenile court is a lot different than adult court, and we're going to talk about a few things that explain this. So number 1, most juveniles are going to be being detained. They're not going to be being arrested. They're also going to be receiving a disposition instead of a sentence, all right? And also, they're going to be being sent to youth development centers. So instead of being put in jail or being put in prison, they're going to be being sent to like a youth development center, okay? Moving on, the second type of solution is diversion programs, okay? So I believe these kind of go along with the youth development programs. but they are designed and created to help regulate the lives of youths. So they're kind of meant to keep juveniles out of the justice system. Okay, so with that, I'm going to close out with a conclusion, and I'm going to summarize some points that we went over today. So, delinquency is a minor crime, most commonly committed by young people, so minors, anyone under the age of 18, all right? It most commonly begins during adolescence, typically caused by family. So, for example, parents, guardians, and we talked about the social learning theory and how delinquents, they learn to engage in delinquency from other people. So that could be peers, family, friends, guardians. Okay, and then we also talked about the three main types of offenders. So there's non-offenders, low-rate offenders, and high-rate offenders. And then the majority of that group was compiled of the low-rate offenders. Okay, all right, and then we also closed it out by talking about the types of offenses, types of offenses typically include status offenses, okay, and then we also talked about who was more likely to offend. So females were more likely to commit less serious crimes, and males were more commonly known to commit more serious crimes, okay. And then we closed it out by talking about solutions, all right? And the solutions included juvenile court, and we talked about what juvenile court was and how it helped. And then we also talked about diversion programs, which were created to keep juveniles out of the justice system, as well as to help them regulate their lives after, being taught to commit delinquent acts and so forth.